Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 presented by Stakes. We are previewing every single SEC football game for week 12, and right now we're hitting one in our backyard of Nashville. The Florida Gators, who've been playing very well lately, come to face the Vanderbilt Commodores, who have been playing much better, and Blake got their first SEC win in 1,119 days, I think it was, when the Commodores went to Lexington and beat Kentucky.
Yeah, if you don't want to count that high, 26 games was the streak, and yes, it ended. And now I think it's kind of a different dynamic. I think for me in this game because they don't get a team that felt like it was reeling. They get a team that feels like it's
Yeah.
finally hitting its stride, and I think that's for Vanderbilt, that's certainly going to be a challenge. I think against this Florida team that I've said even in some of the stretches games that they've lost, like the Georgia game, the LSU game, you could see some things, I think, with this Florida team that are starting to improve. And I think specifically now we look at, these last couple games, what they've been able to do, putting up points. Obviously, the A&M game, unique situation with the guys that were out for A&M, but Florida still took care of business, and they come back, do the same thing at South Carolina in an emphatic way. And I think the common thing that was kind of there in both of those is just their ability to have a three-headed monster in terms of
Yeah.
their ability to run the ball. So that's going to be, I think, what Vanderbilt will be trying to key in on here, and obviously a team that gave up, a big rush to Chris Rodriguez in that game at Kentucky. So I think that's probably one of your bigger storylines in terms of, can Vanderbilt slow down this Florida team that is starting to kind of hit its groove on the offensive side.
Well, when the Gators have the ball, that offense led by the talented but sometimes erratic Anthony Richardson, who was 11 of 23 passing, 2 touchdowns, no picks, at just 4.9 yards per throw. Richardson ran 15 for 96. Of course, he's a phenomenal athlete. You mentioned the running attack. Trevor Etienne, 8 for 131. Johnson, the transfer from Louisiana, 24 for $161. They just have been running the ball like crazy this year. Florida averaging 31.9 points a game. Vanderbilt giving up 35.2. The Gators are averaging, taking sacks out of it, which count as pass plays. Florida averaging 6.7 per rush play. Vanderbilt giving up 5.3. The Gators averaging 6.9 per pass play. Vandy giving up an astronomical 8.1. The Gators have fumbled 4 times. Vanderbilt's recovered 10. The Gators have thrown 7 picks. Vandy has recovered 5. Blake, I think we know what Florida's going to do. It's going to be run, run, run for the most part. And the better way to attack Vandy is the pass, but the Commodores have had some trouble with the run too. Chris Rodriguez Jr. just ran all over them in the second half of that game in Lexington.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? Is this isn't just one guy. This is this is 3 different guys, I think, that can all hit the 100-yard mark. We talked about that in terms of Florida with Richardson, Johnson, and Etienne. I mean, it's just, yeah. I mean, these are all guys that at any time, because one of the things I looked up, Chris, because I was just kind of curious after this game they played against South Carolina. It's like what have been the long plays for each of those guys, right? Anthony Richardson's long, or excuse me, let's start with Montrell Johnson. His long this year is a 62-yard run. Richardson 81, Etienne is 85. So, I mean, again, you're talking about 3 different guys who can just break off huge plays at any time in the rushing attack, and I think that is where, like you said, you can attack Vandy passing wise. Kentucky didn't, but still, I think you can see the problem again is not just, can you slow down Florida's rushing attack. It's, can you slow down their first option, their second option, their third option, because all 3, as we've seen, are going to be a big part of that. And I think that's where, the problem potentially comes in here for Vanderbilt, because like I've said, I just think Florida is just, they're playing with a lot more confidence now. They're playing with a lot more, I think, understanding of what they are. I think there was some feeling out early on offense, trying to figure out. Obviously, we know we have a high potential quarterback in Anthony Richardson that can do a lot of things, but I think now they're getting to that point where they're really starting to sort of settle in. And one part of that, Chris, keep in mind, Richardson hasn't thrown an interception in over a month now, and I think that's a big part of it too. Is that he looks a lot more comfortable with what he's doing. He's in those situations now where, you know what, if it's not there, guess what he's going to do? He's going to find a way to make a play with his legs, and I think that's where your confidence is really growing in what this Florida offense can do.
By the way, it's Trevor Etienne. I feel like I called him Travis. But anyway, before we get to the other side of the ball, when the Commodores have it, check out our sponsor Stakes. You can predict sports better than the crowd for a chance to win NFTs with Stakes, and that's STAKES. Players can cement their sports predictions against friends, other fans, and influencers forever. Don't let your sports genius go overlooked. Join Stakes and have the best predictions captured in the moment. Go to playwithstakes.com/14. Use our invite code Southeastern14 for a double welcome bonus. Again, free to join, free to play, everything to like about that Stakes app. So help out those who help our show. Okay, when Vandy's got the ball, Commodores would have been around 450 yards of offense the last 2 weeks. Vandy's really starting to get some stuff done both ways. Florida's defense has struggled at times, but gave up just 6 to South Carolina. Vanderbilt averages 26.4 points. Florida gives up 26.9 a game. You've got the Commodores, I think, have been picked 5 times. Florida's picked off 8. Vandy has got a little bit of a fumble problem. It has lost 10 fumbles. Florida has recovered 13, which I believe is the most in the league. Vandy averages 4.9 yards per rushing play. Florida gives up the same. Vanderbilt averages 6.3 yards per rushing play. Per passing play. Florida gives up 7.2. And Blake, the thing to know in this one is who the quarterback is. Now, Vanderbilt has been starting A.J. Swan, who's a super talented freshman. But last week it went with Mike Wright. Swan got concussed in the second half of the South Carolina game a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was the end of the first half. In any case, Vanderbilt brought Wright in, who was its starter to start the year. He's a 10.8 100-meter guy, ripped off a 59-yard scoring run against Kentucky last week. And I would think you're going to see Wright this week after the win. Swan's now had 2 concussions. I would bet money. Well, I wouldn't bet money. My guess is that Mike Wright is their starter. That's something you're going to want to monitor. And that may be the right call in this game because Florida's had some trouble against the run this year. And Wright and Ray Davis, who's been really steady too, certainly give them some threats in that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. I think it's going to be hard not to start Mike Wright. And like you said, if there's, concussion issues, you're going to start him anyways if Swan's not available. But I still think just coming off the win, there's a lot of momentum for them. I think still, some of the long balls down the field are going to maybe be a bit of a guessing game for the Commodores in that regard. But like you said, you do have a guy that can offer something on the ground as well. And we know, I mean, look at the league, right? Like we look at all the quarterbacks in this league and just a lot of guys having success in both areas. But I think clearly, if that's what Vanderbilt's approach is going to be, because I mean, the thing is, right, we've talked about Florida's defense. I mean, the numbers have not been great the entire season, but you have seen, I think, still them improve in some areas. Even though, again, I don't know how much you kind of gauge of that Texas A&M game, but the South Carolina game, I mean, they were dominant, right? Like South Carolina couldn't do anything against them, and as we said, that's without Marshawn Lloyd. But still, Florida did what they should have done, and I thought that was very impressive in terms of how they won that game with their defense. And so, yeah, I mean, I think all those things are going to come into play here, and I think it's still just, what does the Vandy offense look like, perhaps in the second week now under Mike Wright in terms of coming off of what they did against Kentucky, being able to, as we said, make those plays down the stretch to win the game after you felt like maybe you'd given it away. But now, can you come back and, go up and be able to do some things against the defense statistically that has given up yards, has given up points? Can you do that this week against this Florida team? And can you do it, I think, with the pass, knowing that, certainly Florida, I think, is going to come into this knowing that I just think the rushing attack is going to be probably the better play on Vanderbilt's part. But we'll see what Mike Wright does. I mean, look, it's hard to kind of flip the switch now and the other way on Mike Wright after what he was able to do last week. Which again, I know there were still some throws he'd probably like to have back, and but still, I mean, he was able to lead them to a win, and they've clearly got more confidence now coming out of that than they did before. So.
Okay, before we go to some trends and things that you'll pull up, one thing to note about Florida: Florida is the most disciplined team in the league. It's leading the league in turnover margin, +10, and I believe it is leading the league in fewest penalty yards too. I'm pretty sure about that. The number there is 40. If not, it's second, third at worst. But I believe the Gators are the least penalized team in the league in terms of yards per games. Vanderbilt not too far behind Florida in penalties, 46 yards a game, and I think Vandy is a 0 even in turnover margin. Commodores were, I think, +5 or 6 early in the year, but that has dropped off lately. So, of course, that game's in Nashville, but I don't know that you'll see any kind of home field advantage for Vandy. It might be 50-50 at best. What have you got in terms of trends and stuff like that? I know you're good at finding some things on covers, so what do we have here?
Yeah, not much here. I mean, it's just kind of the overs 4-0 in Vanderbilt's last 4 home games via covers here. Home team 5-1 against the spread in the last 6 meetings. Um, that's an interesting thing to think about, I suppose. But like you said, I think Florida's going to probably feel like the home team here. Kind of heading into this one, perhaps. So that's something else to look at. I mean, look, here's the deal. Statistically, I think Vanderbilt is better than Florida, and I'm looking at the numbers here. Like time of possession, like that's a even this, what Florida's look like. It's at times, like we said, defensively and such. It's still, I mean, this is clearly, I think just how the matchup plays out. I feel like it's one that really seems like a good one for Florida, just given the way they're playing right now. I know Vanderbilt's coming off the win, and again, they have more confidence than they've had all season. I think based on just getting that win in Kentucky, snapping the losing streak, you kind of can exhale a little bit now. You don't have to hear about that anymore. Um, but I think for me this is more about Florida. I've told you guys, like, I think that they have just really started to figure some things out, and with this three-headed rushing attack offensively, they're really going to be hard to stop, not just by a Vanderbilt, but by a lot of teams, I think, and with the way they're playing right now. So I'm going to go Florida here. I think they take care of business. Again, I just my problem is I don't know what to expect from Vanderbilt offensively. I just think, again, that for me is the issue. I know they played better defensively last week against Kentucky, but like I said earlier and kind of led off with, I think Florida and Kentucky are two teams going in opposite directions right now. And I think Florida brings a lot of momentum into this game, and they are very confident in what they're doing. And I think Billy Napier's done a good job to get them to that point. So I think the Gators, what's the spread on this, Chris? Again, we're not professional
It's
bettors.
14 and a half with an over-under of 57.5 as we're doing this on Sunday night. That lends to about a 36-22 predicted final for Florida.
Yeah, I think it's funny because my number I think was 15 and a half on my prediction we did on the live stream the other night. But I just I'm just gonna pick Florida here. I think they probably win this game by double digits. Um, beyond that, that's your call. So
Well, using the transitive property of football scores, which is probably stupid, but what the heck. South Carolina beat Vanderbilt by 11 2 weeks ago. Florida just beat Carolina by 34. Carolina had about 500 yards in that game, and Vanderbilt had, I think, about 450. Florida just won total offense, 515 to 237 over Carolina. The thing that's given Vanderbilt fits all year. And look, Vanderbilt's been a punching bag. Clark Lee's getting this program better, but you just still see a talent gap. Like, I think if that game had been about another minute left on the clock when Kentucky got the ball back, Vanderbilt just couldn't stop Chris Rodriguez. Is not strong enough in the trenches. Vandy's probably given up more explosive plays than anybody in the conference, if not the Power Five. Florida's got some speed and some playmaking ability between Johnson, Etienne, Richardson. I just think that's problematic. I'm not going to say Vandy won't get up for the game, but, that's a lot of emotion exhausted and coming over a losing streak and then coming back home. I just think Florida's speed is too much. I think you got a chance to see a lot of points in the game. I'm with you. I think I like Florida, and I think I might like the over too.
There you go. Hit that subscribe button. More prediction videos on the way here on the channel.
Well, and check our live stream Wednesday because we may have a better idea of a quarterback situation. You can catch that by subscribing to our channel. We do that at 8 Central every Wednesday night. It's an interactive show. You can ask us stuff in the chat. So anyway, thanks to Blake. Thanks to Stakes. I'm Chris Lee at Southeastern 14. We'll see you again with another predictions video.